Hey everybody, and welcome to Honeybee Entertainment. I'm your Coach B, and today we're going to be exploring the concept of value in Overwatch 2. In the background today, I have some Hazard gameplay from his playtest this weekend. I hope you enjoy. It's not particularly great gameplay, but nevertheless. Value is a concept that is somewhat thrown around in the Overwatch training and coaching community because it applies to every single situation. And I like to look at it almost as an equation. So the value equation is what we're going to be exploring today. In order to explore this, however, we're going to first have to define a few words. The first being value. Value in and of itself is simply the effectiveness of a play. And that's what we're really looking for, is how well we can determine what we did. The next is pressure. Pressure is a force applied to the enemy. You do this through indirect pressure or direct pressure. Indirect pressure would be taking an angle, for instance. The process of going and moving around. If you're not dealt with, you will be able to then apply direct pressure, which is damage or a kill threat. Another example of an indirect pressure would be a mercy, pocketing a soldier. The mercy is applying indirect pressure. Similarly, a widowmaker standing on a good angle is applying direct pressure. There is a kill threat of entering her LOS. Now the final word is resources. Resources are everything. Your cooldowns, your ammo, HP pool, how many players you have alive. Now now that we have all of these listed out in order, let's put them into the equation. So, very simply, value is equal to the pressure applied minus resources lost. So what this means is we're not able to definitively put numbers to this, but we can look at it as maximums and minimums. So if you apply a lot of pressure, but you also lose a lot of resources, the overall value is more or less null. However, if you apply a lot of pressure and the resources lost was rather low, that is an instance of great value. Similarly, if you lose a lot of resources, but you also get a lot of pressure, overall, that's where you have to start saying, all right, how much pressure did I actually apply? And how many resources did I really lose? And so when you get into that gray area, it's going to be a little harder. But if you simply look at it as maximum, minimum, or just nothing, and that would bring me into my next point, is that you actually can have negative value. An instance of this would be a tank going in and trying to swing his hammer and hold a corner. He's ineffective in this, however. The enemy is able to back up and make space, and he's just standing there swinging his hammer. The pressure that he has applied after they have moved away is very little. However, as he's swinging his hammer still, his supports are going to have to put a ton of resources into him to keep him alive. So in this instance, pressure was very small, but resources lost was large, which actually will result in negative value. Now, if we take this and put it into simple algebraic form, we can start moving things around to actually look at different instances. For instance, if we want to look at the resource lost cost and kind of compare that, we could look at this as how much pressure we applied minus the value we actually got. So, if we apply a lot of pressure and got a lot of value, the resource lost even if we did use all of our cooldowns, the resource lost was about even, right? So it's okay that you used those resources. However, if you apply a lot of pressure and don't get a lot of value, the resources lost is much higher, right? And similarly, if you apply very little pressure but get a lot of value, your resources lost is nothing. In fact, you could say that that is a positive resource gained, almost. And then finally, if we want to look at how much pressure we have applied, we can simply look at that as how much value was gained and plus how many resources were lost. So if you gain a lot of value and use a lot of resources, the pressure applied is pretty great. More than likely, you applied a lot of pressure if you had value and were using resources. Now, this is my least favorite combination simply because pressure in and of itself is so subjective. But pressure is going to be a large part of finding how much value we actually had. Now, getting into the next part would be comparison. If we're going to look at value as a number, a product of an equation, what we have to do then is take our product and compare it to the enemy's product. So, if our value is greater than or equal to the enemy's value, overall, we had a positive value, a good value in that fight. If your value and the enemy's value were equal, then no value actually happened. The play was not extremely effective for either team, either player. And finally, if your value was equal to or less than the enemy's value, that was bad value, right? So, I think a great example of this is Tracer. Specifically the Tracer mirror, because this is common in nearly every Pro or OWCS game. You're almost always going to find two Tracers. Now, in this setting, the Tracers have similar roles. However, those roles are always going to be flipping compared to who has the objective or attack, defend, whatever it might be. However, Tracer, regardless, is going to be playing for indirect pressure more than direct pressure overall. They're looking to take angles and flank in order to get that indirect pressure, and they're trying to have positive resource trades, so they always want to make sure that their resource lost is going to be coming from a lot of value and a lot of pressure, or a lot of pressure applied with not a lot of value lost. So, two Tracers are setting up on an angle, and they both decide that they're gonna, let's say it's a King of the Hill map, which are almost always going to have 3 lanes, and both the Tracers decide that they're going to go to the top lane for the map. The Tracers starting the game have the same goal in mind, which is to mark the dive. What marking is to make sure that another player can't capitalize on an angle or flank without first having to get through you, having to fight you. What this means is that before either of the Tracers are going to have real value in the match as a whole, first they have to do this value equation on a micro level. So, what we're really looking at here is the resource lost comparison in order to first find how much value we had. So, a Tracer going in and double blinking into the engagement. The other Tracer is already up 2 blinks. They have a positive resource lost compared to the first Tracer. Now, whoever loses their recall first, more often than not, in a professional setting at least, that tracer is going to die or their team is going to lose the fight. Simply because they were forced to use a resource. They lost their most important resource. So the pressure they were able to apply went down, and thus they also had less value. Of course, we can look at it from the other side. The second tracer. When the first tracer comes in and starts attacking, they use 2 blinks. They are able to then put a clip into the first tracer and blink behind them. Put another partial clip in, blink. They have 3 blinks to use to dodge and duel this other tracer, where the other tracer, the first tracer, only has 1 blink, right? So they are probably going to have their recall forced first, and they're going to have to disengage. The value they had overall, let's go to this. How much value did the first tracer get? Well, the pressure they applied was indirect pressure, but they weren't able to apply a lot of pressure because they got forced out early, right? So let's say small pressure applied minus a lot of resources lost. That first tracer had negative value in that fight. Overall, not only did they lose all their resources and are going to have to back out, but they also were not able to stop the second tracer from completing their flank, completing their angle. Now the second tracer, if we're looking for their value, the pressure they applied was great. In fact, they got to the point where they were applying direct pressure. There was a kill threat for the first tracer. They were forced to leave, so they applied a lot of pressure, and they didn't have to use their recall, and potentially only used 2 blinks. So the resource lost was rather small. A lot of pressure, small resource lost, positive value overall. Now, this is an instance of just 2 characters going, but we can look at this on a team level. I have already talked about that Reinhardt example. I think that the value equation is extremely important for the tank role, potentially more than the other roles, because a tank needs to be doing this mental equation all the time. They need to be looking at how much pressure can I apply right now, and how many resources do I have to expend, or my team have to expend to enable me in order to apply this pressure, right? So the tank needs to think about it on a macro level. They need to think, okay, my Ana has nade, and my Life Weaver has grip. I am going to charge in. I think I can get this kill. The risk is medium, but I know that my team has the resources to pull me out. So if the tank can say, okay, I'm going to apply a lot of pressure, but we are going to lose some resources, as long as the pressure applied is greater than the resources lost, that was a positive value. Now, I could sit here and go over examples all day long, but I hope that this has at least given you the first step of insight into trying to find value in your games. Not, of course, you're going to be having value no matter what, but finding where you actually are getting value is what we're looking for. So, going back to our previous hero review and coaching videos based around you going and doing self-reviews, this is another thing that you can look at. The value equation can be applied, like I said, to the team fight as a whole, seeing how well you, as a player, performed inside of that team fight. But you also can use it on a 1v1 micro level. you can go in to find a duel that you had with another player. And you can see, okay, when did I use this cooldown? Okay, why did I use that cooldown? Was the value of that cooldown worth it? Was the pressure that I applied with that cooldown greater than the fact that I lost that resource? And you can go on and on with not just cooldowns, but how much ammo you had. You can see, all right, I was only able to apply this much pressure, but I lost that resource. Now I have to reload. Now I'm losing HP, and now I'm going to have to use a cooldown to get out. So if we look at all those resource things, they're all combined, and they all allow you to get value. So when you use them, you no longer have that to get more value. So you have to make sure that when you're using those resources, it's always with a great amount of pressure in mind. If you can apply the pressure, then use the resource. If you're going to use the resource and not get pressure, the value starts to go away quickly. So I hope this was insightful. Please, if you have any questions, put them in the comments. Let me know. I'd love to talk about this more. But this hasn't been anything new. There's tons and tons of videos out there that go into similar explanations. But I like the idea of an equation coming from a math background. This is the way that it works best for me. It's something that I can quickly do in my head and simply look at, okay, what did I actually use? How well did I do my job of applying pressure? Okay, I had decent value. I can go and look at that next time, right? So, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. Have a great evening, morning, afternoon. I'm your Coach B. This has been Honeybee Entertainment. Ciao.